Please, if you don't mind.
Preparedness Expo would like to first off thank you for attending the show this evening. We certainly appreciate the support and look forward to a wonderful weekend of great lectures and a great variety of exhibits that I think you'll enjoy, find informative. One thing I'd like to mention is if you find a particular lecture very informative and you'd like to share it, we have an audio tape booth out here that all the lectures will be available moments after it ends. And we we encourage that you make lots of copies and spread them around as much as you'd like, and there's no problem with that. Also, I'd like to mention that we have a new publication that you might not be aware of called Preparedness Journal, and we're handing out free issues on that, and you can pick one up at booth 106 on the other side of the hall. But anyway, besides that, the reason you're here, let me go ahead. William Cooper is the host of the international shortwave radio broadcast, The Hour of the Time. Mr. Cooper is also the author of the underground bestseller, Behold a Pale Horse, which is quite well known. Without going on and on, let me introduce to you William Cooper. The title of his lecture tonight is Treason, an Introduction. Let's have a big hand for William Cooper.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope you brought your thinking caps because, at the very least, I'm going to challenge some of your preconceived ideas and beliefs and notions about this country and where we're headed. Others of you, I'm sure, have been studying all of this and are pretty much up to date, or you wouldn't be here. I'd like to sort of get an idea. How many of you listen to my radio broadcast Monday through Friday night? Good. For those of you who don't, there's a world out there that you're not aware of. Whether or not you ever listen to my broadcast, I encourage you to purchase a good shortwave radio and start to find out what the rest of the world is broadcasting as news compared to what you hear on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and the like. I guarantee you will find a great gulf of, well, let me just put it this way. There's such a difference in what you will hear from the broadcasts of other nations and what you hear in this country that at first you'll begin to wonder how this can possibly be until you begin to experiment. And on any given night when you're watching the news, you can go from ABC to NBC to CBS and CNN, and you'll say, gee, these are different corporations, different companies, different news broadcasters, different anchor men and women, and yet on every single one of these networks, they are broadcasting exactly the same story, worded in exactly the same way, in exactly the same sequence. Now, how can that be? And those are the questions you should be asking. And I'm not going to give you the answer because you got to do something for homework. That's the way I operate. If you listen to the Hour of the Time, we're broadcast Monday through Friday night on 5.810 megahertz, shortwave, at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We are also on satellite, Galaxy 3, I believe it's channel 17, and you have to switch to 5.8 audio. Now tonight I'm just going to give an introduction preparatory to the two lectures that I'm going to give tomorrow night and Sunday. The reason being is I must lay some groundwork for this because the subject is complicated. It involves a large time frame, a period of years, and things that have happened during this time frame that have destroyed our country. For those of you who still believe this is the United States of America and you still have constitutional rights, you're going to go out of here with a different story. And I hope you have enough common sense and enough curiosity and enough care about you and yours to go and check this out. And to help you, we've done the research. And we have the proof available at my booth, which is booth number 110. About 25 years of research is documented, and you can purchase all the documentation. You can take it to any good library or any good law library or any good university library in the country, and you can duplicate the research yourself to prove to yourself that our documentation has not been fabricated or made up or anything else. The motto of my organization is this: listen to everyone, whether you agree with them or not, whether you believe in their religious views or not. Read everything, no matter what it says. If you can possibly take the time to digest it, read everything. Believe absolutely nothing unless you can verify it in your own research in your own time. If you say you haven't got the time to do that, I say then you haven't got the responsibility that it takes to remain a free citizen on this earth. Because remember, of, for, and by the people means exactly that. If you're not willing to be the watchdog, the participator in the process, and the insurer of the government or of the freedoms, then in my estimation, and in the estimation of those who really run the world, you don't deserve those freedoms. Now, the subject of my whole weekend is treason. And for those of you who don't know what that is under the law, or have not read the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights for many, many years, then I suggest that you do so. I suggest that every home should have a copy of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It should be taught to your children from an early age. As I've traveled around the country, I found that most Americans don't know that they've lost their rights because they never knew that they had them to begin with. If they ever read the Constitution in their life, it was in high school because they were made to read it by a teacher when the only thing that was really on their mind was Johnny, if it was a girl, or Susie if it was a boy, and they could care less about that Constitution at that time because they thought that we had fought a big war, World War II, and that the Constitution was secure. All of that is erroneous, number one, because World War II wasn't fought to preserve the Constitution, wasn't fought to save the world from the Nazis, wasn't fought for any of the reasons that we've ever dreamed or thought that it was fought. And when you begin to really study what's going on in the world, you'll discover that no war ever was fought for the reason that the people who fought it thought that they were fighting for. How many of you patted your sons and daughters on the butt and sent them off to die in the desert of the Middle East for Desert Storm? Anybody in here? If there is, you're not admitting it. It's okay. I don't blame you. Because by now you should know it was a whole scam. It had nothing to do with the United States of America whatsoever. And how could you profess to love someone and pat them on the ass and send them off to fight a war that had nothing to do with this country? Yet Americans did it. And the polls said that 96% of Americans supported the war and supported the president. And I say that wasn't true, but most Americans were afraid to voice their dissent because it's not cool to be unpatriotic in time of war. Is that correct? So we patted our sons and daughters on the ass and sent them off to face a possible death in a foreign country to fight a war which had nothing to do with us, our nation, our Constitution, our freedoms, or anything else. Period. The media was controlled, and it's the first time that we fought a war where the media was so controlled. We were shown pictures of bombs going right straight down the middle of smokestacks. When it was all over and we got the true figures, we found out that they were no better in their accuracy in Desert Storm, I call it Desert Scam, than they were in Vietnam. In other words, 70% of all projectiles fired, whether they be missiles or bullets, missed their target. Simple as that. Treason. against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or in confession in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted. United States Constitution, Article 3, Section 3. Now, why do I start off a weekend reading you the section in the United States Constitution dealing with treason? Well, it's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. We are at the stage that we find ourselves at simply because treason has been worked against us for at least the years between today and the year 1933. Now, in 1933, the United States found itself in a very bad position. We found ourselves bankrupt simply because we had allowed a state bank or a central bank to be formed in 1913. Illegally, I might add. Unconstitutionally, I might add. And fraudulently, I might add, because it was never done properly according to the terms in the Constitution, and is in fact and has been since that date null and void. Under the real law, should any judge have the guts and the courage to rule on real law in his court. Now, when that happened, the President of the United States signed an executive order which brought the American people under what they called the Trading with the Enemies Act. When it was originally signed, the American people were exempted as being the enemy. Later, when this executive order was renewed, that clause was removed and the American people became the enemy. Since then, unconstitutionally again, our currency has been debased. We are no longer a nation with real money. We deal in instruments of debt, Federal Reserve notes. Now, this was bad enough and constitutes treason on the surface as it is. The United States formally declared bankruptcy in 1938 as a pledge against the loans to make the country again solvent. All of the resources of the United States of America were pledged as collateral. Now, what that means, ladies and gentlemen, it becomes evident when you look at the documentation and the paperwork, and you find that at that exact time, birth certificates became a requirement, and they are filed in the Department of Commerce with the Office of Human Resources. That's when you ceased obtaining an allodial patent title to your land and began receiving warrant deeds. That's when you stopped getting the title to your automobile and anything else you purchased and began to receive a certificate of title. All of these mean one thing, that you are no longer sovereign kings and queens, citizens in your own right, but are in fact indentured servants, subjects of this bankruptcy proceeding, and you now are owned and are pledged against the debt of the United States of America. That's what it means under the law. It means that anything that you have purchased and have received a warrant deed or a certificate of title, you do not own, nor will you ever own it. If you had a patent allodial deed to your land, you would not be paying property tax, which in reality is a rental fee to the true owner of that property. So those of you who think you own your homes, you do not own anything. Every time you purchase something with an instrument of debt, you have not actually purchased it. You see, no transfer of ownership can occur unless the purchase has been made in money. What is money? Money, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States law is defined as a dollar. What is a dollar? A dollar is a specific measurement of gold or silver coin. How many of you deal in gold or silver coin? One person? And I know that he's probably not lying because some of us do. You see, a Federal Reserve note is an instrument that says somebody owes somebody else some money, but we ain't telling who. It's not even currency. You call it currency, but it's not. Now, if you doubt anything that I'm telling you, you get a copy of Black's Law Dictionary and you look up all the definitions of money, currency, coin, gold, silver, note. Look them up. Currency is something that is issued to take the place of money. In other words, you have on deposit in a bank 100 gold coins. You can then have the bank issue you a slip of paper that says it's good for 1 gold coin, and you can go out and do your business with that. That is currency. The reason it is currency, and reason that currency can be counted as money, is that the currency can be taken back to the bank and exchanged for that 1 gold coin. Does everybody follow me? When's the last time you tried to exchange a Federal Reserve note at a bank for anything other than another Federal Reserve note? What do you get when you try that? They laugh at you. They'll take your $1 Federal Reserve note and give you another $1 Federal Reserve note. And then you'll be the joke in the bank for the rest of the day. The money you're carrying in your pockets, ladies and gentlemen, is not worth the paper it's printed on. It is worth only what some fool is willing to give you for it. Period. Now, this didn't really begin in 1913. It's been working on the world since human civilization began. And it's working on us now because that's the only way to bring us back under the thumb of those who would be our masters. Everybody thinks they know who's doing this, and everybody who thinks they know who's doing this is wrong. I'm going to tell you right now that if it was the banker who was screwing the king out of his throne, the king would merely kill the banker and the duel would be over with. So all of you who are blaming it on the international bankers, you are wrong. Dead wrong. You see, any king, to get out from under the thumb of the banker, all he has to do is start issuing notes on the good faith and credit of the kingdom. But they don't do that, do they? That's because the king is not really the king and never has been. The king wouldn't be in that position if he were not put there by somebody else who has guaranteed him protection and sovereignty as long as he goes along with their game plan. This started when the first man learned how to make the first fire without having to wait for lightning to strike a tree. And he withheld this knowledge from the other members of his little group, or it may have been the beginning of a group when others came around in the cold dead of night to get some warmth from his fire. He became the first king. He also became the first priest in the first religion, which was the worship of the sun, the light, the fire. Today they're called the philosophies of fire, or the philosophers of fire. It's not the Jews, never has been. It's not the blacks. It's not the whites. It is a group of men who have banded together in a secret religion which has been practiced for many, many thousands of years, right up to the present day in secret, is still practiced today. They still worship the sun, the light, only today some people have learned to call it Lucifer. They don't believe that that really is a god. It's a philosophy, the Luciferian philosophy. That man was set free from the Garden of Eden when he was being held in bondage by an unjust, vindictive God, by Lucifer through his agent Satan, with the gift of intellect, primordial knowing. Primordial knowing. They don't keep this secret. It's called the generative force, what makes things work. In Egypt, it was the worship of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Only people misinterpret the meaning of those terms. They don't know what the religion was. They think Osiris was a god, Isis was a goddess, and Horus was their child. In reality, Osiris is the doctrine, Isis is the church, Horus is the full body of initiates. One of them might call himself the son of a widow, for Isis was widowed when Set, or Typhon, murdered her husband Osiris, chopped him into 14 pieces and scattered him all over the land. This was the dispersion of the learning, the college of priests that existed in the ancient cities, which we represent as Babylon. When this college of priests was dispersed, the teaching was lost. The doctrine remained, but the teaching was lost. They call it today the lost word. All over the world, the followers or the adepts, the initiates, the priests of this religion were widowed. They had no place to go. They had to practice their religion in secret, and still do to this day. When Christianity came along, it became their greatest enemy, because Christianity would not accept anything that they taught or believed. Now, I'm not telling you what you have to believe, and I'm not saying that this is right in the substance of it. I'm just telling you that this is at the basis of what is going on. These people have, for the history of the world, been the power behind the thrones of the world. They don't like to be recognized. They don't like to be in the limelight. Those of you who really believe that Bill Clinton runs this country have lost it. Bill Clinton does what he was trained and prepared for all his life, and that's represent the people who really do run this country, and just about every other country in the world. These people have a habit of burning their enemies. Thus you have Bob Matthews burned on Whidbey Island in Washington. You have an attempt to burn the Weaver family in their cabin in Idaho, which was aborted because reporters saw the helicopter trying to lift off carrying this bladder of petroleum fuel that they were going to dump on the cabin. You see the burning of the MOVE group in Philadelphia. You see the burning of the Symbionese Liberation Army, which, by the way, was formed out of a mind control experiment in the prisons right here in California, which was documented by the Napa County Sentinel newspaper, in case you're looking for evidence of this. You see the burning of the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. When I revealed right after that raid on the 28th of February that those people were going to be murdered if people in this country did not catch on to what was happening and stop it, they burned WWCR, the radio station that I was transmitting over. They believe that all things in nature are renewed through fire. The souls of their enemies will not be reborn and come back to fight them if the souls are cleansed through fire. When you die, you're supposed to go into the light, where you can then be cleansed and recycled into another body. This is all part of their religion. You can see it manifest everywhere. The symbol of the generative force is the phallus of Osiris, that Isis could not find. So she fashioned a golden phallus and placed it upon the altar of Egypt in his place. They're called obelisks. You can find one in Dealey Plaza. You'll find one in New York Central Park. You'll find one in the outer courtyard of the Vatican. You will find one on the grounds of Sion House in England. When Jim Garrison arrested those that he was trying to pin the murder of John F. Kennedy on in New Orleans, he found statues of stone penises in their homes. These are all the outward symbols of their God. The generative force, primordial knowing, the use of which man himself will someday become God. Any religion who teaches that man is God or man can become God is a branch of this ages-old mystery religion. I don't care what you call it. But don't get mad at the people who attend these churches because they don't know what they're a part of. Most people who attend these lodges do not understand the own symbology of their own religious initiation ceremonies. They don't even know, for the most part, that they even belong to a religion until they've gone through so many levels of initiation that they're hooked and can't get out even if they wanted to. These men long for what they call the Golden Age, a return for a time distant when they ruled the known world. And you will hear that term, Golden Age. You heard it when Hitler was in his rise to power. You saw all this symbology when Hitler was coming to power. You heard the same words, New World Order, when Hitler was coming to power. Many Jews helped Hitler rise to power. Many Jews are helping these people come into power now under the guise of Zionism, and they don't even understand that they're going to go through the same suffering that they went through before because they didn't learn their lesson. Neither did anybody else in the world. The icing on the cake occurred when a man by the name of Harry Truman went into the White House. Together with the help of his assistant Mandel House, all members of this secret religion literally formed the United Nations. The United Nations building is built in the United States because the United States is the United Nations. The United Nations is the United States. You better learn that right now. It was built on land donated by the Rockefeller family. Harry Truman signed the United Nations treaty. He pushed it through the Senate to be ratified. He pushed through Congress the United Nations Participation Act, which literally took away the sovereignty of the United States of America, and through a misinterpretation of Article 6 of the United States Constitution, placed the United States under the United Nations Charter, and the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights are no longer, since that date, the law of the land. They're letting you think that it still is because they don't have your guns yet. And if you're for gun control, if you're for taking guns out of the hands of the American citizens, then you are, if you don't like it, that's tough luck, folks. You are a fool. You see, Hitler, Gaddafi, Fidel Castro, Stalin, all proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that gun control works. Works very, very well. And every population in the history of the world that has been disarmed has become slaves. Socialism sucks. Everywhere it has been tried, everywhere that it has been put into place, the first people they have executed have been the people who brought them to power. University professors. And again, they're falling for the same scam. All the university professors, not all, but most, in our colleges across this country are teaching Marxism and socialism. They haven't learned from history because every time socialism has come into power, they have been the first ones executed or imprisoned. And it's going to happen again, but they seem to think that it can't happen to me. Oh, no. I'm a university. I'm a PhD. PhDs bleed. They also make good slaves in work camps. Treason has been worked upon the United States of America with the goal of destroying the sovereignty of this country from the get-go. I'm going to tell you something else you're going to resist believing, but it's true if you'll look it up. Most of our forefathers were members of this mystery religion. Outwardly, they appeared to practice Christianity in their communities. In their writings and in their deeds, they did just the opposite. I hear all the time patriots spouting the drivel that this was created as a Christian nation, and that is absolute nonsense. If this was founded as a Christian nation, our forefathers would have made Christianity the national religion. Instead, they put a clause in the Constitution forbidding any legislation or any laws respecting any establishment of religion. Now, we as Americans need to get our heads on straight real quick, or we're going to lose everything that we've held dear to our hearts throughout our lives. We're going to lose it all. Through apathy, through ignorance, through irresponsibility, and yes, folks, through downright stupidity. Most Americans are today what I call sheeple. And their language can be heard every day, day in and day out, in any barnyard in the country. For most of what they say is nothing more than bah, bah. Most Americans have not had an independent, original thought in their whole life. Most Americans, according to the polls, spend 7 hours a day in front of the great brainwashing machine called a television set. Now, we're in serious, serious trouble. You hear all these things from all these speakers that we're going to be invaded by Russia. You hear that we're going to have an economic collapse. You hear this, you hear that, you hear the other thing. I'm going to tell you right now, none of it makes any difference whatsoever. And you can chase MIAs and POWs all you want to. If we lose this country, what are you going to bring them home to, and why are you going to bring them home? Do you understand what I'm saying? We have one problem in front of us that has to be solved before anything else can be addressed whatsoever, or you're spinning your wheels, chasing your tail, becoming useless in this fight, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to become a racist. They want you to think that somebody's out there rounding up all the gold because the Treasury Department bought back the Federal Reserve System, and if you give them $300, you're going to get several million back. That sound familiar to you? There's another one, Treasury Gate. Somebody from Indonesia who never saw this dude, Tommy Buckley, in their life, came over and gave him billions of dollars in bonds. And everybody's chasing that story around. They got you guys chasing your tails in so many different directions. The loss of this country and your freedoms are assured unless you get your head screwed back on straight. The enemy is not in the Soviet Union or what used to be the Soviet Union. The enemy is in Washington, D.C. and in Phoenix, Arizona and in San Jose, California. That's where the enemy is. The enemy is sitting right in this room. Until I began to screw my head on straight, I was the enemy. Treason. You see, all the time we were supposed to be in this great opposing ideological battle with the Soviet Union, behind the scenes they were cooperating 100%. The CIA is the KGB. The KGB is the CIA. Do you really, in your wildest dreams, believe that the Soviet Union fell apart because their economy just couldn't make it anymore? Hell, folks, their economy didn't exist on the world market. Their economy was what they said it was. It didn't come from the bottom up. It came from the top down as a part of a well-orchestrated plan to bring the nations of the world together in a one-world totalitarian socialist government. The same words that George Bush and Reagan were spouting are the same words that Mikhail Gorbachev was spouting. And where is Mikhail Gorbachev now? He's in the Presidio, folks, illegally, I might add, because the Congress has not made it available for other than military use yet. Yet he's there, and he's established the Gorbachev Foundation. And what is the purpose of the Gorbachev Foundation? To bring all governments, all peoples together in a one-world government. You think that's a coincidence? Do you think George Bush was the first one to use that term? Not on your life. But who am I to know? I'm just a paranoid conspiracy freak. Should be evident by now, folks, that everything that all of us who are paranoid conspiracy freaks have warned you about has come true. Now, for those of you who never read the Constitution or read it so long ago that you don't know what's in it, I'm going to tell you right now, it may come of a shock to you, but you have no rights under the Bill of Rights anymore. The Constitution is not in effect. And when a court is deciding a constitutional question, the judge must have before him a copy of the United Nations Charter and its resolutions and a copy of the Constitution. If the Constitution conflicts with the United Nations Charter and its resolutions, the United Nations Charter and or its resolutions shall prevail. Think the military is going to help us? You're wrong. They've been teaching one world government as a solution to war in the military academies of all of our military services for many years. They could not have got to the point that they are at now without the full cooperation and complicity of the senior officer corps of all of the military services of the United States government, and that's why you better be careful and cover your ass when you're dealing with people like James Bobo Grits. He attended the War College. That's where they plan things like this. He was the commander of Operation Watchtower in Central America, which was the umbrella protection for the drug flights being flown into this country, and it has been proven time and time and time again by every researcher that has investigated the subject. We are in trouble. I tell you now that these people are experts at what they call the Hegelian dialectic of political conflict resolution, which is they don't wait for a problem to be created, they create the problem, then they control both sides of the issue. That's why huge organizations like the John Birch Society are doing nothing. Nothing. That's why people like Rush Limbaugh are on radio all over the country. But you've got to tune into shortwave to hear me, because I'm telling you the truth. And he's calling Bill Clinton names. If you care about freedom, you must be ready and willing to die for freedom. For if you are not, you will soon be slaves. Now, for those of you who want to get a jump on tomorrow night's lecture and Sunday's lecture, I have spent, and others have spent years researching and documenting all that I'm telling you. I have 628 pages at my table right now of the documentation from the United States Code, the Congressional Record, State Department publications, a book written by Orson Welles back in the 40s, folks, before World War II, where he says that the war is coming and what's going to come out of the war is socialism. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, I want you to understand something. I'm for only one type of people. Americans who understand the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and understand that that's the only document ever penned by the hand and mind of man that ever set anyone free on this earth in the entire history of this earth. If you are for that document, I am for you. If you are against it, I am against you. I don't care if you're a Jew, a Baptist, a Lutheran, a black, a white, a purple, a Chinese. I don't care. If you're an American, I am for you. If you are for that document, if you're for freedom. If you are against it, I am against you. Now, we are at the point now that without tremendous public pressure, there will be no political resolution to this situation, and there will be no relief in the courts. Which means that some of us may have to fight for our freedoms. And I suggest to you that you begin thinking about that right now. And that whether it comes to that or not, you should at least be prepared for that. And you need to go out of this room tonight with a resolution that you're going to begin to learn what I have learned, and you're going to begin to teach everyone that you meet in your life from this point onward the truth. And that you're going to devote your life to discovering the truth. And no matter what race, religion, or creed, or organizations you belong to, that you're going to begin to look at those organizations to find out whether they've been deceiving you and leading you down the wrong path. And if they have, you need to find the truth and go with the truth and get out of those organizations. Now remember, I have nothing in the world against individuals, but there's a lot of organizations in this country that are destroying us. If you look at what happened in Germany as Hitler began his rise to power, and you begin to look around in this country, you see the same things happen again, including the collection of genealogies of peoples, whole families, that don't even belong to the organizations that are collecting these genealogies. They did the same thing in Germany. We must wake up. We have been following lies. We've been following deceivers. We've been manipulated. Most people have lost all conception of what this country started out to be. You want to know why the children are aimless? Want to know why the children don't see any hope for the future? You want to know why a young black man recently said on TV, I might as well get in a gang, and who cares if I get killed? There's nothing to live for anyway. They don't have the vision that I was taught as a child. They don't understand what this country's all about. They don't see any hope because they haven't been given any. You know why they join the gangs? Because the gangs love them, give them the security, give them hope, give them purpose. What's the purpose? The survival of the gang. Being on top, protecting our turf. All you have to do is give them substitutes for those things, and you can pull them right out of there. But you don't need substitutes because we got a real battle, a real reason, real ideals, real principles, something they can get their teeth into if somebody will just teach it to them. Schools, if you have your children in public schools, you better get them out. Treason. Treason, ladies and gentlemen, against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Everything I've described to you fits the definition of treason. It's the destruction of the greatest nation that's ever existed upon the face of the earth, with the people who have had more freedom, more promise, more opportunities, the greatest wealth, the best brains and technology that's ever walked upon this planet. And we are pissing it away. Now, if you go out of here tonight and cry, it's okay, folks. Just remember, the more you cry, the less you pee. My booth is number 110, We have the entire package of documentation to prove that everything that you're going to hear from my lips tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday night is absolutely 100% true. You can take it into any court of law and prove treason. You can prove it to any one of your neighbors. It's the documentation that you need. If you doubt it, take it to the nearest library and duplicate the research. I guarantee you none of it is hidden from the public. If you are diligent in your pursuit, you can find every single page that we have spent the last 25 years documenting, and if we didn't have it prepared for you, you would spend the next 25 years looking for it. And by the time you found it, it would be too late. We also have Linda Thompson's second video, the sequel to the first one, which proves that everybody who attacked her are liars and set out to discredit her only to support the government's case that they were okay in doing what they did. In a nation that is supposed to revere freedom, Waco, Texas is not supposed to happen. And those of us who really understand the Constitution and the second article and amendment in particular have vowed that this is never going to happen again. And I myself will give my life to make sure that it does not. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Also, folks, Gene Miller, the sponsor of the Hour of the Time from Swiss America Trading, is at my booth, and you can register to get the monthly newsletter with him, and you can also pick up this. It's free, The Right to Own Gold, and some other literature if you'd like to stop by. Thank you.